I found out my platoon leader had never actually been in combat after leading us for months. Lieutenant Mason had been running our unit like a textbook operation since he arrived at our base in Afghanistan. Guy seemed to know everything about combat tactics, weapon systems, enemy behavior patterns. We trusted him completely. Mason had all the right credentials on paper. Airborne qualified, Ranger tab, expert marksman badges. His uniform looked like a recruiting poster. More importantly, he talked the talk perfectly. Knew exactly when to call for air support, how to position squads during patrols, which routes were safest for convoy operations. 3 months into our deployment, we'd followed his leadership through dozens of missions. Never lost a single soldier under his command. The guy was like a tactical genius. Always seemed to know what the enemy would do next. That's what made the discovery so shocking. We were prepping for a major operation when our communications went down. I was tasked with running new radio cables through the command bunker when I overheard Mason talking to our medic Danny. Mason was asking basic questions that made no sense. How long does someone usually survive after taking shrapnel to the chest? What does it actually sound like when mortars are incoming? Do IED explosions really throw you backwards like in the movies? Danny looked confused. Sir, you've been through this before. You know what combat sounds like. That's when Mason's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Actually, I don't. I've never been shot at. Never seen anyone get wounded. This is my first deployment. My blood went cold. Here's our platoon leader, the guy we'd been following into firefights for months, admitting he had zero combat experience. All his knowledge came from training exercises and military manuals. I kept listening, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Mason explained that he'd been stationed at Fort Riley his entire career. Desk jobs, training rotations, nothing overseas. When deployment orders came through, he'd studied every field manual he could find, memorized combat procedures, enemy tactics, everything. He'd been faking his way through leadership by applying textbook knowledge to real situations. The crazy part? It had been working perfectly. Danny asked the obvious question. Sir, how have you been so effective if you've never done this before? Mason's answer stunned me, because I actually read the manuals that everyone else ignores. I follow doctrine exactly instead of relying on gut instinct. Plus, I listen to the NCOs who do have experience. When Sergeant Kyle suggests a different approach, I take his advice and make it sound like an order. The enlisted guys never question it because they assume I know what I'm doing. That night, I couldn't sleep. Should I report this? Was it even illegal? Mason hadn't lied about his qualifications, just never corrected our assumptions about his combat experience. More importantly, his leadership had kept us all alive. The next morning brought our biggest operation yet. Intelligence reported a high-value target in a compound 2 miles out. Complex mission requiring precise timing and coordination. I watched Mason brief the operation with his usual confidence, but now I could see the difference. He was reading straight from the operations order. No improvisation, no personal insights from experience, just pure adherence to military doctrine and procedures. The mission went flawlessly. We captured the target without casualties, extracted cleanly, everything by the book. As we loaded onto helicopters for extraction, Mason caught my eye. He knew that I knew. Back at base, Mason called me into his office. I'm assuming you heard my conversation with Danny yesterday. Yes, sir. He nodded slowly. Are you going to report me? I thought about all the successful missions, the zero casualties under his command, how his by-the-book approach had actually worked better than the cowboy tactics I'd seen from other officers. Sir, you've kept us alive for 3 months using nothing but textbooks and common sense. That's more impressive than combat experience. Mason looked relieved, but still concerned. What if the men find out? 2 days later, word spread through the platoon anyway. Someone else had overheard parts of that conversation. Instead of losing respect, something unexpected happened. The guys were amazed. Our lieutenant had been successfully leading combat operations using pure study and preparation. No battle-tested instincts, no war stories to draw from, just dedication to learning doctrine and listening to experienced NCOs. Mason finished the deployment with commendations from battalion command. His methodical approach and zero casualty rate impressed everyone up the chain. He got promoted to captain and now teaches combat leadership at West Point. At his promotion ceremony, Mason gave a speech about the importance of preparation over experience. The ceremony program listed his decorations: Bronze Star, Combat Action Badge, and Army Commendation Medal, all earned during that deployment where he learned combat leadership in real time. Last month, I got orders to his new unit. Mason's now my company commander. In our first meeting, he handed me my assignment and smiled. Still think textbook knowledge beats experience, Sergeant?